Guys, welcome back to another episode, another edition of the 0JIAKO podcast. So get straight into it. UFC 259, which almost feels like it was the fight of the year. So main event: Israel Adesanya versus Yan Blachowicz at the light heavyweight division. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. So this was seemed like the biggest, it felt like the biggest fight of the evening. It was main event, so it felt, it was the biggest fight of the evening, and almost felt like it was the biggest fight of the year. It's just what the fight that everybody was talking about, and again, it has the echoes of UFC 257 stamped all over it. Hopefully you guys can hear me. It has the echoes of UFC 257 stamped all over it. Basically, we all thought that someone like Dustin Poirier would lose against someone like Conor McGregor, and in this case, everybody thought someone like Yan Blachowicz would lose against someone like Israel Adesanya because of Adesanya's athleticism, his agility, his speed. Can move. I heard one of the mixed martial arts veterans call him a slick striker, and I can understand that because he can move pretty well because of his athleticism and his size and his stature. Overall, Yan proved so many people wrong, even his close friend Joanna. A lot of fighters were asked about this. Just about 95% of the MMA community all said Israel has this in the bag and he's definitely going to win. They can't see someone like Yan Blachowicz winning the fight. Blachowicz may have the size and the power, but unfortunately for him, Israel has the speed and the agility. Even though Israel would have moved up in weight a little bit just to meet up in that particular weight class, the light heavyweight division, still, you can't get over it. You may have power, but the thing is, how can you use it and use it efficiently? In this particular fight, again, he proved so many people wrong. Like Dustin Poirier proved so many people wrong at the UFC 257. So many people, I'm sure they would have placed their bets on this, saying that Israel Adesanya has this in the bag. But I like when this happens, actually, whereby the person who is predicted to lose actually proves everybody wrong, all the naysayers wrong. They'll be eating their words, and basically, it's just a good feeling. It changes things. People are kind of thinking a different way, in a more positive way. In the fight, Blachowicz did a good job of checking Adesanya's kicks, and both sides were exchanging lots of heavy shots, especially particularly in the second round, and in the second round, about halfway in the second round, and Blachowicz nearly got Adesanya in a clinch, but Adesanya was slick enough and athletic enough to just break out of that, and but still, Blachowicz did land some heavy strikes and punches, and there was one point in the fight whereby Blachowicz was cornered by Adesanya, and Adesanya did get a heavy head kick in there, and because Blachowicz was cornered, he had to raise his hands up to guard himself, to guard his face. But overall, I personally thought myself that I thought that Adesanya would actually win this because, just to be realistic, he's fast, he's athletic, and I'm basically repeating everything I just said at the beginning of this podcast. All those things, and many said, and even I myself, I thought that the only way that Yan would be able to win this was basically to get Adesanya down in a takedown and keep him there on the floor. Hold him down there and exchange blows and punches, or get him to submission, rear naked chokeholds, or a armbar, something like that, and yet win the round. And many people are still saying, well, yeah, that's true, but unfortunately, the opponent that you're fighting is going to make that very difficult, or even almost impossible for you to do that. So, but no, he proved people wrong. He did get Adesanya into a takedown, and he did win the fight. He got a takedown in the fourth round, and he did a good job by keeping Adesanya on the ground. Yeah, and he won by unanimous decision. Sorry, guys, just looking looking at my notes. So moving on to the next fight, which is also another big fight, but this was a co-main event: Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson, the women's featherweight division. Now, this girl, Amanda Nunes, I have to say I've heard about her. I even heard about her last year. I remember whilst I was working, just in my normally day job. This is about the time that I really got into MMA. I was just listening to podcasts and listening to some shows on YouTube, and they were talking about her that she's well accomplished in the sports of mixed martial arts. She's a really good fighter. Has, of course, before I made this podcast, unfortunately, so to say, I've not looked at her actual winning record, her fighting record in mixed martial arts. But from the sounds of it, she clearly has more wins than she does losses. So she's a really, really good fighter. And after watching her before UFC 259, watching her fight, is it God? I've forgotten her name. Is it Felicia Spencer? And the other one that sticks out in my mind really well, Chris Cyborg. She really did some damage to those two ladies, especially the other girl, Felicia Spencer. But and Felicia Spencer, the other fighter, which I think that fight was far more recent than the fight with Chris Cyborg. In that fight, there were the corners and the ref and all the people, the medical team, were asking Felicia, is she actually okay to continue with the fight? Yeah, Felicia Spencer back at UFC 250. They were asking her, just checking up on her, is she okay to finish the fight? I mean, that's not that it means anything, but that's just testament to how good of a fighter Amanda Nunes is. And when she fought Chris Cyborg, just in that first round, she finished her off. I mean, as she was throwing her punches and strikes and moving in with her attack, she really did injure Cyborg so much that Cyborg couldn't keep up, and I think they had to stop the fight. Nunes won. So again, likewise in this fight, UFC 259, where she fought Megan Anderson, again, from the way it looks like, I make one of these points that this is almost like, or is exactly like, one of those fights that ends before it's even started. And I've noticed that Nunes, when she's fighting any of her opponents, she always keeps close to she isn't so evasive like some other fighters that are coming to my mind now. She always keeps close to her opponent. It doesn't give them too much room. Always, she's tactical and smart, but it doesn't take her time to move in for the kill. I think she'll kind of like try and chop you down with just strikes and leg kicks here and there what's the word I'm looking for, to just weaken you a little bit before she moves in, even with a takedown and a takedown, and then finishes off her opponent with strikes. As I said before, what would have been my preview podcast, which I didn't make, which I later decided not to make because it was just too close and too late to the time of the UFC 259 fighting event. One of the things I did say, I would have said if I'd published it, but she does look like a well-rounded fighter. Her striking is good. Her stand-up, as they say, is good. And her ground game is really good as well. She's a black belt or purple belt? No, I think she's a purple belt. No, not purple belt. Black belt in BJJ. So, her. I think overall she's a well-rounded mixed martial artist, and this was proven again in the I don't know why I'm laughing, but this was proven again in the fight she had with Megan Anderson at UFC 259. In the first round, everything just came to a head and a finish in less than about 2 or 3 minutes, and she won. She won via a submission. And next up is where the controversial illegal knee came in. I should help calm my nerves a little bit. So, Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan, the bantamweight division for men. So it was an entertaining fight overall. Started out well. Both of these guys were seriously going at it, striking, leg kicks, elbows, coming in hard and strong from both fighters. So the problem really arose at the end to what kind of marks the end of the fight. So Aljamain Sterling was still on the floor. He still had one of his knees touching the floor, as was briefly explained to me by my coach Charlie, that I mentioned in many of my podcasts. And he did mention that if your opponent's knees on the floor, then you can't. I hope I'm saying this correctly. You cannot attack them. And what happened is that Sterling's knee was on the floor, and Yan came along and he executed an illegal knee, and they stopped the fight. And Sterling appeared to be, if not fully but partially concussed. You can see that it just almost looked like he was awake, alive, but it looks like he didn't know where he was. And people asking what at the end of the fight, what was Yan? Why did Yan have his hand raised? And he stopped getting tongue twisted. He kind of explained himself at the press conference after the fight, saying that he didn't know, and he actually thought that given the situation of what he had done, that knee that he had executed on Sterling, that the result of the fight would have been no contest, but that wasn't the case at all. I mean, everybody saw what happened. You know, the opponent had his knee on the ground, which means you can't attack them. I hope I'm right in when I say that, but this is how I understand it when it was explained to me, that Sterling's knee was still on the ground, so that knee would have been illegal. And for Sterling to make things worse, even though the win was given to him, and he was he defending the belt, but even though the win was given to him, I can understandably he was still annoyed and pissed, and many people in the mixed martial arts community all came out saying, yeah, tough fight, so that was a good fight, forced a good fight. It's a shame for what happened at the end. However, that's not how you achieve a win. You know, you finish the fight. You make sure you finish the fight, whether it's a TKO, flying knee, whichever way, but not in this manner. Because I was even saying to Charlie that I can't remember who it was, but I was saying to someone on Instagram, just commenting on the post that I'd posted, that you know, it will feel to Aljamain Sterling. Excuse me. It will feel to Aljamain Sterling as if that was an easy win, that the win was handed to him, you know, off the back of what had happened. So I can understand that, you know, as Joe Rogan was saying in his commentary, that this will not be looked on, especially by him anyway, it will not be looked on as a proper victory. So I can understand his upset. Many people in the community were upset by what happened as well. Now, I think some people, TJ Dillashaw came out saying that this guy's cheated, and you know, basically many people are coming out and saying, you know, disagreeing with what happened, that that's not a proper win. You know, he should have been given at least, you know. And Dana White has said that the whole fight is going to be redone again as soon as possible. So I think even he can understand that it wasn't a proper win, and it should be redone again. The other guy made an illegal move, and that's basically not on. Yeah, and another thing I should point out, Yan was disqualified, and therefore the win did go to Sterling. But I was saying to Charlie, in this sort of sport, especially even Petr Yan is about 29 and Aljamain Sterling's 31, so not age difference isn't much, but I'm sure they fought in this sport long enough, even when they're not competing in a competitive environment where they're going to compete. But even outside of that, I'm sure someone like especially Petr Yan, because this is really centered on what he did, he should know the rules by now. So how could he not have known that was an illegal move they had made, then how could he not have known that the result would have been a disqualification? Why did he think that he was going to be given a no contest, that the whole thing would have resulted in a no contest? No, that that wasn't the case. So it's a bit strange, and it's also annoying. I'll say it's annoying for me, but it's going to be more importantly be annoying for someone like, well, it'll be annoying for Aljamain Sterling because this affects him more than anyone else. Alright, guys. So, yeah, and I agree, if the fight gets redone, fine. If the fight gets redone, then it should result in this fight basically that it almost like it didn't happen at all because of what happened. Basically, it wasn't fair. Moving on, Islam Makhachev and Drew Dober, the lightweight division. Now, my prediction was in this fight that Islam would win. Drew Dober has good striking, ferocious striking, but Islam seems a lot more well-rounded, like his teammate Khabib, who was cornering him in this event. Islam also fights out of AKA. Yeah, Islam did get quite a lot of takedowns in the fight, and in every single round of the 3 rounds they fought for their own fight, Islam, these guys are good at wrestling. It's something that's either that's in their blood, or it's just something they're good at. They practice from a really, really, really young age. Because likewise, Khabib, I think Islam also wrestled with bears back in Dagestan, in Russia, where they're from. Because he managed to keep his opponent Drew Dober on the floor for a long, long while, in every round, and that's how he basically finished the fight. In the first round, Islam got a takedown and he kept Drew Dober on the ground for a long while. Dober was kept on the ground for the remainder of the first round. In the second round, the same thing more or less happened. In the third round, the same thing happened again. I mean, Islam's ground game was really good. He kept his opponent on the ground for a long while. In the third round, he kept Dober on the ground, but he won by getting Dober to submit through an arm triangle. What is it? Yeah, it was through an arm triangle choke. Excuse me. So moving on now, this fight, Alexander Rakic. God, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Alexander Rakic versus Thiago Santos, the light heavyweight division. Now, granted, I didn't see the full fight of this because the UFC Fight Pass app, unfortunately, there's something they've done, and I think what they've done is that certain fights outside of the main card, preliminary card, and any other fight, excuse me, but any fight that's not going to be on the main card, I think they delay the release of those fights to be played back by people, just to make sure that anytime you do see the fight and then you see it and you want to talk about it, probably the fights in the event overall will not be so relevant anymore. And I understand it's business. The UFC is a business first. UFC, Bellator, Pride, One Championship, they are businesses first. So I get it. They got to make sure that they're making their money first of all. That's the reason why they're in existence, making money, and of course providing sporting entertainment for people to watch. But the thing is, that app, I wasn't able to see all of the fights that happened, especially those fights on the main card. It's just the one fight on the preliminary card, Cruz and Kenny, Dominic Cruz and Casey Kenny. That fight was on the app, but the main card fights were not. So unfortunately, most of what I'm talking about would be coming from highlights. So for this fight, Thiago Santos, one of the last fights I remember him fighting was against the other fighter, Glover Teixeira, and it's one of those fights that I do remember how just at the beginning of the fight, Santos' striking was really ferocious and really strong, deadly. but Teixeira did change things with the takedowns, especially at the end. So in this particular fight, I didn't see the end, but I do know that Alexander Rakic did win by unanimous decision. So my mouth just keeps getting dry. And last but not least, but not the last of the fights, but this is the last of the fight that I did manage to catch. Yes, Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny, bantamweight division. So in this fight, Dominic Cruz won. Looking at his past fights, I would have thought that I would have leaned on the side of Casey Kenny winning, but that wasn't the case. Dominic Cruz won. And I say that I would have leaned on the side of Casey Kenny winning because on the last 3 fights that I saw of Dominic Cruz fighting, which was TJ Dillashaw and the other one of Henry Cejudo, Dominic Cruz was always being very evasive in the octagon, and one of the commentators did say that if the octagon had been a bit smaller, then Dominic Cruz wouldn't have been able to get away with being so evasive, moving around the octagon, always being on the move and avoiding his opponent's attacks, whether it's striking, kicks. And it's one of the one thing that I saw Dominic Cruz do when he was fighting TJ Dillashaw. When he did avoid any attacks, or when he did avoid an attack coming from his opponent, he would move out of the way, but at the same time send a jab, just put a strike in there, which is smart. The smart thing to do. So while he's avoiding attack, he's executing attack. While he's avoiding while he's avoiding an attack, he's executing an attack. I always get tongue. Don't know why this happens all the time. It's funny, but it does get annoying. So in this fight, I noticed Cruz was a lot less evasive than the last 2 fights that I saw, and also got plenty of takedowns. And when he was fighting TJ Dillashaw, takedowns was not too much of a thing for him. It was actually more coming from his opponent's side, from Dillashaw, who was doing most of the groundwork and wrestling and grappling. So in this case, he did win by God, I didn't even make a note of that, but I know in this fight he did win. So overall that card was pretty, at least for the main cards, and for the way I saw it was a pretty stacked card. The most annoying thing is I've got to find a way of watching these fights live, because at least if I can't watch them live, have them recorded as they're being streamed live, because the most annoying thing is either they're being broadcast in the UK too early, so I can't really stay up and watch them, or they'll be broadcast whilst I'm working or be tied up doing something else. But moving on to other news in the MMA world, so people have been reacting to Yan's win against Israel Adesanya. Of course, as I said before, he's proven many people wrong, because a lot of people saying this guy would not win. Even his closest friend, Joanna, who I can't even remember her name. I think I can remember her name, but I'm not going to bother pronouncing it because I'll sound just ridiculous on the in the podcast. But I do. It's something I do like, and I can't really explain it as such, but I do like when someone who's not necessarily a bad person, because from what I've been hearing, he's a decent guy, very approachable and friendly and respectable. Even Israel Adesanya even said that even though he lost, he was happy that he lost to someone like he was happy to lose to someone like Blachowicz, because of his overall character as a decent person, a respectable guy. But there's something that I do like about someone who has so many naysayers saying you're not going to win. Even if you do win, it's just going to be by a very, very narrow margin. It's going to be by a takedown or by a TKO, by a clinch, whatever. Something like that. But before you even manage to do that clinch or takedown, the opponent's going to make it almost impossible for you to do. I like when someone comes out, and even hearing all of that proves virtually everybody wrong, because even his closest friend Joanna, she was saying that he has so much to lose in the fight, but Israel Adesanya has so much to gain, has the upper hand and the advantage. And even I believe that Israel Adesanya to have the advantage, but that wasn't the case. Again, I go back to UFC 257, Poirier versus McGregor. Everybody thought that McGregor was going to win. I wanted Poirier to win it again. I said that for the upteenth time. He did win. Well done. I thought that McGregor was going to win, but Poirier won. That picture of Conor McGregor just kind of lying down on the canvas, look, just like he's taking a nap. It's still doing the rounds on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, everywhere. Khabib coming out saying you wanted everybody to wake up and pay attention, give you that attention to fight in front of the whole world, with all the eyes watching you. So afterwards, you earn the money and the win, whatever. And then Khabib came out saying you wanted everyone to stay awake to watch you fight. But look, you went back to sleep again, tweeting and posting that picture of him, of just what he looks like after the knockout. So again, I'm glad that Jan Blachowicz won, and also credit to Israel Adesanya for also putting up a good fight too. There's not much else to say here about the Petr Yan situation. That's also making headlines in the mixed martial arts community. But again, Dana White has said that he's going to have that fight rearranged as quickly as possible, because even he is not happy about what happened there. That Petr Yan cheated basically like he did, and he's been disqualified. Funny thing is, though, I did see a picture on Instagram of Aljamain, and this could be a fake, but they were saying it looked like a meme, but they were saying in that meme, in that picture, that that he wasn't happy with his win, he wasn't happy with the situation. But funnily enough, he was standing with his belt and had all his friends around him, his team around him, and they were happy and drinking, just celebrating the win. Now, either that's an old picture that's been turned into a meme, an old picture that was taken before UFC 259 and it's been turned around into a meme, or maybe it's a genuine photo. But from the looks of it, from his reaction at the post fight interview they had with Joe Rogan, I've got a good feeling that it must be a meme. It definitely must be a meme. But if that fight's going to be rescheduled, then good. I'm glad that Dana White's going to do that and make that happen. Yeah, and so Paulo Costa made a jibe at Israel Adesanya on Twitter. This guy, the whole thing is becoming pathetic. It really, really is. The guy said, just selling a jibe and insult to Israel Adesanya, skinny were you drunk to, respect his white belt. Let it go. Just let it go. Everybody knows you don't like each other, but you got to put that violin away sometime, because it's just getting old, and people lose a lot of respect for you for the fact that you just can't take that loss and go back to the drawing board, go back to training, just work harder, just polish your craft and try and do better next time. You can't win them all, because what if the whole result of that fight between you and Adesanya had gone the other way around? Do you think that Adesanya would have been just dragging the whole thing out on like you are? I've got a good feeling that even though he said that he's happy that he lost to someone like Jan Blachowicz, I've got a good feeling that Adesanya is not going to be going on about this loss for ages and ages and ages. Just let it go, Paulo Costa, because you're making yourself look really stupid and dumb. And the excuse you gave that you were drunk, if it's an excuse or if it's a genuine reason, that has just made you look even worse. Really, really bad. Okay, guys, I think that would be it for this particular episode. I'm hoping this kind of Jack Daniels Coke, even though it's not much compared to something like the real thing, like Jack Daniels whiskey on its own or any other whiskey on its own. I think it's helped me just with my nerves a little bit for this particular episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to be not going to be, but my podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud, which is the hosting platform for the podcast. I'm still working on that Apple podcast issue, which is becoming a pain. I'm sure I'll feel even more foolish if I do find out at the end that it was something so simple, so very simple. But yeah, you can also follow me on Instagram. My name is JIAKO1. On Twitter, my name is JIAKO, and on Facebook, if you still use Facebook, my name is JIAKO. So yeah, I don't think I'm forgetting anything else. Thanks.